David Starkey.
This is a fascinating instance, isn't it, of the war between heart and head. It is perfectly clear that to cut the 50% rate of tax at the moment looks wrong. Everybody with a heart, which John notoriously doesn't have, understands that. I mean, remember, he was beamed in from outer space, so he's completely inhuman. On the other hand, of course...
You don't have to insult a panellist to win an argument.
I'm flattering him. I regard
Well, please tell me when you're going to insult me.
I regard the great problem of British politics, as exemplified by Labour and the Lib Dems, as an absolute slushy, mindless sentimentality that refuses to think. We're in a position, because of the complete wreckage of the public finances left by Labour, that we have to increase tax revenue. There is no way round that. The issue is how we do it without destroying the economy and with also getting the economy moving again. Not little posturing like somebody who should be ashamed if she's Shadow Chief Secretary of the Treasury of this cheap posturing. Now, we have had an experiment...
Sorry, David, there's nothing cheap about saying that you would prioritise ordinary families over the top 1%. That's not cheap. That's just making a realistic priority.
No, it's
right
not,
now,
because what you're doing is you're proposing to reduce the tax take by lifting those families and those little businesses out. Let us address the real question, which is how we increase it. We had a controlled experiment. The last long period of Labour government in the country before New Labour took tax rates up to 98%. They were then cut by the great reforming Chancellor, Nigel Lawson, whereupon the tax take from the rich at times virtually doubled. Exactly. Now, sorry, this is the head. I know ladies like the heart, but John and I, both heartless, can actually decide that the head must rule.
Okay. Woman up there. Woman up there in the middle at the back.
Putting aside your opinions on women...
no, don't, please.
I can think of a good way that we can get more from tax without changing the rate, and that's to crack down on tax avoidance by large companies.
Okay. And the man in the middle, you said that.
Can we make an agreement at the outset, please? We leave the propaganda and party posturing about the ruination of the economy with the last government at the door, not on the table. I'm sorry.
Why?
Okay.
Why?
Because
of
that is exactly what it is, propaganda.
No, it's not, it's fact. And if you can't recognise fact, you shouldn't be at a programme like this.
Don't like it. You don't like the propaganda comment.
Why do you have the insolence to think that your opinion is better than anybody else's?
Why can't
you argue? Why can't you argue a case?
You want to talk?
Argue a case. No, I argue a case. He's not doing. He's just sort of coming in rather like a preacher, waving down the tablets of the law. I'm bored of Moses. No, there were lots of Moses in this place.
But David, you're the one that's just insulted half the women in the room.
I was just doing a quick.
Oh, just two of us.
Both of you are adopting exactly the same.
No, actually, it's not the same to you.
David Starkey, he was simply saying that it is political posturing to go on and on about who's responsible for this.
It's vital that we understand what's happening.
Let me bring in Clark Carlisle. I'll come to you, Joe. Clark Carlisle.
Well, it's no secret to everyone that the majority of our membership will, encounter the 50% tax bracket.
This is the footballers?
Yes, yeah. You know, we have 3,000 members, and in the top two divisions, most of those guys will fall under the 50% tax bracket. But let me tell you, they are more than happy to contribute in any way they can to support the recovery of the economy. But I think the salient point about this is defining an overt show of a popular decision over actual rational decisions. And I think it's going to be a recurring theme of what I'm going to say on topics tonight, is that the government doesn't seem to be asking the right people about the decisions that it's making. Now, when you're going to take decisions that affect businesses up and down the country, you ask the people in those businesses. And if those guys are telling you that raising the tax bracket to 50% is driving the top earners out of the country so that they either pay their taxes elsewhere, or it reduces their chances of expanding the country to create more taxes, then surely they're the people who we should be listening to on this topic, and not someone who's come up with an idea that will be very popular with the masses from Whitehall.
Okay. The woman up there. Yes, woman there, and then come to the gentleman over here. Yes.
As a woman who most definitely thinks with her head and not her heart, surely it should be time to stop prioritising this tax cut and this tax cut, and instead cut tax to a flat rate across the board, and then cut the deficit by taking the revenue, the lower, admittedly perhaps revenue, but more likely to be higher due to the Laffer curve, and then use that to cut the deficit instead of stop taking money off rich people and poor people alike.
You'd like a flat rate tax, literally. Yeah. John Redwood, would you support that, the Laffer curve argument?
Well, I support the argument that certain taxes become a problem if you put the rate too high. You can see that with income tax, you can see it with capital gains tax. And I think at the moment we so desperately need the revenue, we've got to optimise all the rates. We've got to set the best rate for collecting the maximum revenue. And I think that is head and heart, David. Mm-hmm. I care very much to reduce the tax burden on people on low pay, and I don't think rich people deserve a tax cut. I just want to get more money out of them, and the only way I can see of doing that is to have a rate that they will pay in Britain in a very competitive world where they've got other options. And I'm delighted that footballers want to make a bigger contribution, but I think quite a lot of footballers find all sorts of tax planning arrangements and offshore devices which enable them not to pay.
Well, John, I'm sure that this is a topic that will... I'm sure that this is a topic that we'll come to later with what's going on with Barclays, but minimising tax liability is something that every business person in this country does, from greengrocers right up to the other end of the scale. So to castigate one group of people for doing that in a legal way is completely incorrect. But the thing about Barclays is the fact that they're actually in contravention to the banking code, and that's why they should be held accountable for those decisions.
Okay. The gentleman up there, I said I'd come to.
Isn't the way to improve the tax intake to stop the loopholes, such as individuals setting themselves up as companies, as we've seen in government recently?
Okay.
Can I just come back on
very briefly, Jen, because I want to move on. We've got a lot of questions here.
Regardless of the sexism, which I have to say, David, does you no credit, nor does it help your argument. Actually, I'm arguing something very different to what Rachel is saying. Because, again, want to talk. What I'm arguing is not for unfunded tax cuts like the Labour Party. The Liberal Democrats are saying cut taxes for hard-working families by increasing the taxes on the wealthiest in society. And there are a range of ways of doing that. It's not that the 50p rate is sacred. We're already getting £7 billion extra in through cutting down on tax avoidance, £2.5 billion extra from the banks, and we need to look at other ways of doing this. And I think the Treasury review to see the best ways that we can make sure the wealthiest in society pay their fair share is what we need to do. It's a fairer tax system that's important, so we help people on low incomes and the wealthier people pay more.
No, you can't. No, you can't. I'm sure you'll have plenty of time to make all the points you want, but I want to go on because it's done a quarter of an hour so far. We've only done one question.